Well, turning to China now, where the country's biggest diplomatic event of the year has wrapped up. For the past 2 days, President Xi Jinping hosted, as you can see, their world leaders at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, including Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Their growing strategic partnership was clear from the get-go, with all three leaders huddled close together, smiling and laughing. There was also a shot of the Indian Prime Minister and Russian President sharing a car ride together, with Mr. Modi writing on social media their conversations with Mr. Putin are, quote, always insightful. President Putin also used the forum to defend his war in Ukraine and reiterate his talking points. He praised efforts by China and India to find a resolution and made reference to the recent summit in Alaska with US President Donald Trump. Have a listen.
Мы широко ценим усилия и предложения.
We value the efforts and propositions of China, India, and other strategic partners of ours to solve the Ukrainian crisis. The mutual understanding that was reached at a recent Russia-US summit in Alaska heads in the same direction, I hope. It paves the way to peace in Ukraine, I hope.
Well, to help us unpack the latest, let me bring in our Mark Stewart, who's joining us, staying up late for us, and we're incredibly grateful from Beijing. Mark, let me start with those images that you were showing our viewers there. They tell quite a story, right? A show of force, a show of unity, which is what they want to portray. Even potentially if those images may have been choreographed or improvised. Just talk us through what came out of the summit and what Xi Jinping's message critically was here.
Right, so let's not downplay these images, the optics, because this symbolism tells a much broader story about China trying to appeal to the rest of the world as China really tries to establish itself as the leader of a new world order. So I think it's very safe to say that Beijing sees these images that we have been broadcasting as a very high point of the summit, in addition to some of the politics and the economics that were discussed. I mean, China, without question, is using the summit as an opportunity to portray itself as this alternative to the West, to these traditional alliances like NATO, and as the leader of a new world order, as a nation that is strong, that is stable, and that is predictable and not necessarily full of surprises, as many nations have seen in dealing with the United States. Let's take a brief listen to some of Xi Jinping's remarks.
We should advocate for an equal and orderly, multipolar world and a universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization, and make the global governance system more just and equitable.
Now, we didn't necessarily hear the United States being mentioned by name, but there were some hidden, some veiled references. There are a lot of phrases that we hear Beijing use when referring to Washington, such as bullying. That is a phrase that came up in the discussion. So this is a conference that is based on economics. It's based on politics. But Isa, I have to tell you, as someone who lives here in Beijing, the focus now is going to be a big military parade that will be taking place on Wednesday local time, not far from our bureau here in Beijing. It's essentially going to shut down the city of 21 million people. Yes, we will see tanks. Yes, China will unveil its new military apparatus, but also another symbolic moment, another issue of optics, when we see not only Vladimir Putin with Xi Jinping, but North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, Isa.
And that will be quite something, going from diplomatic might to military might that we'll see this week. Can I just ask you very briefly, in terms of President Putin, perhaps not surprised that President Putin was there. He clearly needs China to keep the war in Ukraine going. But what about Modi? I mean, this was a big win for Xi Jinping, having him there. I mean, it's his first visit in 7 years. What does that say?
Right, it is a big win, especially because India and China have had a lot of tension. There have been border disputes in the Himalayas. Now, it appears that some of that is easing, but his mere presence also sends a message about the Ukraine conflict, if you will. China right now is facing a lot of criticism from President Trump because of it is the #1 customer of Russian oil. India is also a big customer of Russian oil, and it's now facing tariffs. India is an ally of the United States. Obviously, China and the United States have a much more adversarial relationship. So to see these two leaders together under this very complicated veil of Ukraine, that does send a message that there can be conciliatory relationships, if you will, between these two leaders. I should also point out that it's notable that Narendra Modi is not going to be at the parade. Obviously, India is a democracy. Perhaps that plays into it. But that's also part of the optics about who's not going to be there as well, Isa.
That's very telling. I did not know that. Thank you very much. Mark Stewart, appreciate it. Great to see you at this time. Thank you.